So what do when you need a tool that's no longer available? Well, let's find out. Okay, we've been doing some work on a 1968 Mercury Cougar we've got here at the shop. And one of the things that we've needed to do is replace the upper control arms because one of them broke while the customer was driving the car, actually. So, being this is a Ford product, Ford does things a little bit different, and their coil springs in the front end are actually set on the upper control arms instead of like a GM car where they are on the lower control arm. So we've got to come up with a way to compress the spring on this vehicle in order to pull that control arm off and replace it with a new one. Now I've got the factory service manual for this car, and it does show, as you can see right here, a Ford spring compressor tool. Another picture of it here on the next page in action. So you can see here, tool just kind of goes down through the center of the spring. It's got a piece that slides in, and you tighten up this part of the upper part of the compressor, and it pulls the spring together. I don't have that tool. I've never seen that tool, and I'm not sure if a more modern type spring compressor will work. But this tool doesn't look that hard to make. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and make our own spring compressor so that we can get these control arms changed. Hey guys, I just wanted to take a minute and talk to you about a website that I've been involved with for a couple years now. It's called Mopar Connection Magazine. This is the only online daily Mopar magazine on the market, and it comes free to you in your email. You can catch all the videos of Project Marcia on there, plus a lot of the other project cars that they have going on. And one of the things that they have too, they have a really nice web store where they've got t-shirts for sale and other things that you can buy that will help support all these projects and also help keep the magazine coming to you free of charge daily. So go over to Mopar Connection Magazine at www.moparconnectionmagazine.com. Check out their web store and get yourself a shirt. Alright, so in order to fabricate our spring compressor tool, I went out to the local hardware store and I picked up a 2-foot piece of threaded rod, 3/4 inch size, 2 nuts and a washer, and also went through my scrap bin of metal, and I've got some 3/16 plate steel, 2 pieces here that I'm going to use to fabricate my top plate and my bottom plate that will slip into the spring. Allow the threaded rod to go down through the top plate. I'll have a nut welded to the rod that slides in the bottom of the spring, and that'll allow my threaded rod to thread into that nut, and once that gets started, you can pull the spring up and take the tension off the control arm so that they can be changed out. Okay, so I took my piece of 2-inch flat stock and I went over to the car and I laid it across the top of the shock tower just to see what kind of length I needed, and I got a piece that about 5 inches long, I guess, marked where I needed my hole at, and I cut the hole out using my plasma cutter. Now I also cut a couple of small pieces that I will attach to the sides here so that they face downwards, so that this will sit in the opening where the shock goes down through, and it'll keep this plate from wanting to move around while I'm taking the tension off of that spring. So I'm going to go ahead and get my welder now and attach these 2 pieces to the sides of this, so that'll leave this piece done. I've just got some rough cutting on here that I can clean up with my grinder just to clean it up a little bit, and this will be ready to go. Alright, so now you got the idea of what I was trying to make. Again, this plate will sit on top of the shock tower. These 2 tabs will go down into the hole to locate it from moving around, and our center bolt will go down through the center. Okay, just to give you an idea again of what I was talking about, this top piece sits inside that hole where the shock goes down through, and these two tabs keep it from wanting to move around as I'm tightening up that center screw. Alright, I measured the diameter of my spring and I transferred that to this 3/16 plate steel. And I'm just going to cut a square out of this. I may round the corners off on it just so it's not got sharp edges to it. So we'll get this. This will hang over each side of the spring enough to where I may take a couple pieces and weld them on the sides as tabs to kind of locate this on the spring so it doesn't want to shift around too much either, just like I did with the other piece. So let's get cutting this out with the plasma cutter. Okay, so I've got my plate cut out. I'm going to center this and cut a hole in my center so that my rod can go through, and then I'm going to weld the nut to this plate so that I don't have to try and hold it with a wrench while I'm tightening the top. It should work. I just need to make sure I get my rod cut to the right length when I cut it down so that everything lines up good. Alright, I got my hole cut and my nut welded on so that when my rod comes down through the spring, come down through the top, through the spring, and it'll screw right into this plate, and then I can crank it from the top, pull the plate up, and that'll pull the spring up, and that'll take tension off my spring. So I'm going to clean this piece up here, get my hole center cleaned out, and then I'm going to determine how long I need to make my rod so that I've got enough to get down to this plate, but not so much that I have too much to tighten it up with. Okay, we had a slight modification to this plate. I took it over to the spring and I slipped it in the spring between the coils, and what was happening was the plate would sit like this. Now with an angle like that, my rod is not going to go up straight. It's going to go up at an angle and would never match up the top of the hole at the top of the shock tower. So I split this plate here and I bent this down so that I can get this plate in here where it will sit almost even, but it's not quite. It's still a slight angle, but it should be enough to get the rod to come down and meet this nut so that I can get everything put together inside the spring and be able to pull that tension up. It's not pretty, but it'll probably work. Alright, I've got my spring compressor installed and my center rod down through the spring, as you can see it there, and I've got a wrench on top with another nut. Now I'm going to have to let the car down so that I can turn this nut in and pull that spring up to take the tension off as much as I can and get it off of this. Hopefully it'll take it up enough to get it off of that control arm so I can get everything changed out.